Hello and welcome. My name is Patrick Dubois, and I'd like to tell you about a new technique for predicting human behavior that I developed as part of my doctoral research. Every day, schools, employers, and other organizations select people for various opportunities, and to do this carefully, applicants need to be assessed for suitability. To serve this need, a multi-billion-dollar industry has grown to provide these assessments, and with each company competing to provide the most accurate evaluation. Typical assessments focus on various aspects of cognitive ability, such as fluid or crystallized intelligence. These have a proven track record, but somewhat limited scope. While cognitive ability traits are rightly valued in our culture, let's consider a broader perspective. Throughout history and across cultures, people have been valued not only for what they can do, but their self-knowledge of what they can't do or do not know. Beyond knowledge or ability is the wisdom of how best to use one's talents. The ancient Greek philosopher Socrates famously noted that wisdom begins with awareness of ignorance. Recall too Aesop's fable of the hare and the tortoise, where the hare had far more ability to win the race, but less self-awareness on how to use that ability for successful performance. It was the tortoise's wisdom that won the race, not his speed. In modern life, what happens when we ignore our ignorance? In the field of engineering, we have the dramatic, even mythic example of the Titanic, where builders tragically overestimated their ability to make a supposedly unsinkable ship. And the horrific repetition of history when the OceanGate submersible imploded trying to visit the wreck of the Titanic. In the medical industry, we have the terrifyingly overlooked reality that doctors and hospitals are too often overconfident in their knowledge and thus implement treatments that do more harm than good. Even in the legal system, we have too many judges and juries that think they know somebody is guilty when they actually aren't. And too many police officers have shot innocent people based on a false sense of knowledge. Sadly, the pretense of knowledge can be deadly. Wisdom of one's ignorance or limitations is overlooked in modern assessment. When predicting future performance, ability measures are well-studied, familiar territory. This gives us one angle, but perhaps we can triangulate and consider another dimension. A person's awareness of their ignorance, their wisdom or humility about their ability. Combining these perspectives can refine and enrich our predictions. Now comes the challenging question. How does one operationalize wisdom? How can we assess ignorance awareness? I have developed what might be called an ability pretension index, a measure of an individual's pretentiousness, arrogance, hubris, their pretense of ability. This can be considered a facet of the broader domain of wisdom, but in reverse, more pretension means less wisdom. This is measured as a behavior, the tendency to make false claims of knowledge or ability. This gives you numbers, but what good are they? This index has predictive power. It has predicted the very broad outcome of university grade point average, a measurement influenced not just by cognitive ability, but also pragmatic life skills in managing one's time, health, relationships, finances, and so on. More importantly, scores from my test predicted GPA distinctly, beyond typical measures of cognitive ability or personality. In the language of statistics, this index captures unique variance with incremental predictive validity. It increases R squared, or percentage of variance explained. In business language, this means a potent new technology to add value to whatever assessments you already use. In terms of non-cognitive correlates, these scores resonate with the honesty-humility factor on the Hexaco model, an aspect of personality that is hard to assess without some bias, yet very valuable in some situations. Other correlations paint a broad picture of the kind of individual differences identified by this index. In general, these scores can distinguish relative levels of someone's sense of entitlement, their narcissism, gullibility, and their hindsight bias, which is the pretense of thinking, oh, I knew it all along, when actually they didn't, and their tendency for overplacement, also known as the better than average effect. This index also correlates with behaviors of overconfidence, impatience, cheating, and simply not following instructions or clerical error. Altogether, this sketches a portrait of the kind of individual differences identified by this technique. You can imagine how valuable this assessment would be for, say, selecting people to build your next ocean liner or submarine. A lot of money and lives could be saved. Or maybe you just want to find employees with less sense of entitlement or students less likely to cheat. Now the rubber hits the road. How practical is this to administer to thousands of people? My methodology is very cost effective. It can be brief, taking only a few minutes. It is scalable and best delivered online. It is also behavioral and not contaminated by self-report bias or reactance. Notably, especially for identifying darker traits, it is surreptitious or stealthy. This makes it resilient to faking or misrepresentation because test takers are not aware of the personality characteristics it captures. This also means that it is resistant to copying by competitors. There are no specific sets of items, but rather algorithms to select or generate them. So new item sets can easily be generated. Even if items are stolen, it's not at all obvious how they are used or scored. This lets you hold on to your competitive advantage. Altogether, my methodology provides a way to increase the power of your predictions and add value to the assessment services you already provide. The pretension index broadens the scope of what is being assessed. Never before has there been an industrial scale approach to evaluating wisdom. This creates new market opportunities and gives you a competitive advantage and the potential to disrupt the industry, carving out new territories and leaving other players rushing to catch up. I hope I've piqued your interest. If you can imagine the enormous potential of this innovation in assessment, I'd be happy to discuss how we might collaborate on developing and applying this further. Thank you for listening.